Hello, I'm Ed Chisholm, and in this video I want to show you a couple of products that I've been using on my snare drums over the last few years as a dampening solution that's worked really well for me, and I'm absolutely loving them. Hence why I wanted to make this video to talk about them a bit today. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the Snareweights, and more specifically the M1 and the M80. They make some other products as well, but these are the two that I've really settled on using. Essentially, the M80 is just a bigger version of the M1, and therefore it provides more dampening. Simple as that. Otherwise, they both do pretty much the same thing. So why do I like these so much compared to some other tried and tested dampening methods that have been around for years? Everything from gaffer tape to gels and everything in between. Well, what I really like about these, one, I can just leave it on the drum in the case and it's not going to fall off, it's not going to get a bit mucky, it's not going to leave anything behind when I take it off. Obviously it's just, this is just a piece of leather basically that clips on, so it's not going to leave any nasty sticky bits behind as some of those other methods that I mentioned can do over time. But what's really good about these is they have variable amounts of dampening. So, if I just hold this up, if you haven't already seen these before, as I say, it's just made of leather, but dotted along the length of it are these magnets. So what you can do is you can fold it into different positions to allow more or less dampening. Okay, and that's what I want to demonstrate to you today. So let's get on with it. Let's show you what this is going to sound like. So all I need to do is clip it onto the hoop of the drum, or the rim of the drum there. I've got triple flanged hoops on this drum and it fits just fine, but I've also used these on drums with die cast hoops, or the sort of the straight hoops as well, just as easily it works, so no problems there. So those now aren't going anywhere, obviously they're just going to stay put. So there are a handful of different positions that I can put each of these in. So when you first put them on, obviously they are in the fully on position to provide the most dampening. I can flick them back to completely remove them from the drum skin, which will take away all the dampening. Or then, as I say, where it gets really handy is I can either fold them so one side is up, or both sides are up. There we go. And obviously, depending on the sound I'm after, doing so allows me loads of different dampening options. Even to the extent that you could do it during a song or in between songs. If one song you want a big open sounding snare drum, and on the next you want a much more dampened, and kind of tighter sound with less overtones, you can do that really easily. And that's what I find myself doing now that I've got that option available. So let's see what it sounds like. It's worth pointing out, I wouldn't normally use both of them on the same drum unless I was after a really dampened or muted sound. But for this demonstration, I'm going to compare for you what each of them sounds like in each of those positions. So first of all, let me show you what this drum sounds like without any dampening. I'll just turn the snares on. So without any dampening, wide open, this is how this drum sounds. Okay, and then I'm going to go through each step with each of the snare weights, the M1 being the smaller one and the M80 being the larger one. So first of all, let's go for the M1 all the way on. Here we go. And the M80. Okay. Now what about if I fold up one side of each of them? So first of all, let's do one side of the M80, fold it up, that is. And then one side of the M1. Then let's do both sides of the M80. To be honest, this makes it a similar size to the full M1, just for reference size-wise. So here we go. This is both sides of the M80 folded up. and then both sides of the M1 folded up. Now, I think that gives you all of the different options, but let me just go through each one step at a time. In fact, I'll keep playing as I do it so you can try and hear the difference between each one a little more clearly. I appreciate these differences are subtle, and I hope they come across okay however you're listening to this, but I can assure you that in the room, sat right on top of this drum, each of these does have a noticeable difference. As I say, I'm really chuffed with using these on each of my snare drums to help me get just the right amount of resonance or dampening, depending on the room that I'm in, the sound I'm after, the song I'm playing, even the section of the song. You get the idea. Anyway, here we go. So let's start with the M1 from the least amount of dampening, well, other than off. So let's first of all have it just with the smallest amount of dampening that the M1 can have, and then I'll put down one side, I'll put down the other side, and then you'll hear the full impact. Here we go. Okay, and now the same with the M80. Here we go. So let's go for both sides folded up. Then I'll release one side and then I'll release the other. Here we go. And hey, if you're curious, let's see what it sounds like with all of the, with both of these on. And both of them off. Okay, I hope that was helpful. As I say, I've ended up putting one of each of these on each of my snare drums, either the M1 or the M80, depending on what sort of use I usually use that particular snare drum for. Some of them I do want to have the option of really giving it quite a lot of dampening, so I've stuck the M80 on it. In fact, this drum I normally just have the M80 on. And the M1, again, that's just, I tend to put that on drums where I don't want quite such heavy dampening. I want maybe just a more subtle option. So for instance, I've actually just taken the M1 off this drum behind me, which is just a 5-inch deep version of this. They're Ludwig Classic Maples, if anyone's wondering. So as I say, I've ended up putting particular ones on particular drums depending on the use I get from them. But as I've shown you in this video, depending on how you have them folded up or even completely off, in absolutely no time at all, you can access a whole range of sounds depending on how you have it set up. I hope that's been helpful. If you've got any questions about these, how I use them, or anything that I've not covered, then please do feel free to get in touch in the comments, and I'd love to hear from you. But otherwise, I would really recommend checking these out if you haven't done so already. As I say, they've really, really become a tool I cannot get by without in my day-to-day drumming life. Thank you ever so much for watching this video. If you've liked it, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. It was all going so well. And consider subscribing to my channel, where I put up more and more demonstrations and things like this. So if you're into it, check it out, and hopefully there'll be more that follows. Otherwise, thanks so much for checking it out. Take care and all the best.